Let's talk about one of the most iconic and frankly haunting images in all of literature. It's at the very heart of Edgar Allan Poe's masterpiece, The Raven, this dark bird of ill omen, perched permanently on top of a symbol of pure reason.
So Poe leaves us right here, in this frozen moment. The action is over, all the frantic questions have stopped, and all that's left is this chilling picture, a shadow that has fallen and absolutely refuses to leave.
And that's the big question we're digging into today. How does this simple physical arrangement, a bird on a statue, so perfectly capture the complete and utter breakdown of our intellect when we're faced with absolute grief?
Okay, so to really get what's happening, you've got to understand the battlefield. And in this story, the battlefield is the narrator's own mind, which is represented by his chamber and, well, the stuff inside it.
First off, this bust of Pallas, it is not just some random decoration. No way. It's the narrator's anchor. It stands for a world that's supposed to be governed by logic, by scholarship, by what he calls his forgotten lore. It's his safe space of intellectual order.
And then the raven arrives. Its dark shape, landing squarely on that white bust, isn't just an intrusion. It's basically a declaration of war against the entire foundation of the narrator's reality.
Let's be super clear here. This is not just about a man being annoyed by a bird. This is a visceral, head-on collision between two fundamental opposing forces, and it's all playing out right there above his chamber door.
And you can see the two sides laid out perfectly right here. On one side, you've got Pallas. She represents wisdom, facts, logical thinking. And on the other side, the raven. It's all about irrational despair, the supernatural, and the unanswerable permanent nature of loss.
And that is the whole ballgame, really. The bird's presence is a metaphysical invasion. It's bringing the chaos of emotion and the supernatural into a sanctuary that was built specifically to keep all of that stuff out.
And this is where the physical symbolism becomes just so incredibly powerful. Where that bird chose to land isn't an accident. It spells out the central theme of the poem, the complete and utter defeat of reason.
I mean, think about it for a second. Pallas Athena, the actual embodiment of human intellect and strategic thought,
is literally being used as a bird perch. Her wisdom doesn't fight off the darkness, it becomes a platform for it. It's a brilliant way to show that our rational pursuits are often totally powerless when profound grief just walks into the room.
You know, there's this amazing metaphor that just sums it all up perfectly. The narrator's intellect, his logic, it was just renting space in his own mind. But when sorrow, the true landlord, showed up, logic got kicked right to the curb.
And the raven's weapon in this fight, it's just one word. But man, it is an absolute showstopper. Every single time the narrator tries to use logic to find a little sliver of hope, what he calls a balm in Gilead, that word, nevermore, just slams the door shut. It's a linguistic dead end.
So, let's turn to the narrator himself. What's going on inside his head? We can see this play out in what you might call the parable of the failed logician. Because at his core, this guy is a scholar. His first instinct isn't to freak out, it's to analyze. He's trying to solve his grief like it's some kind of academic problem.
He sees the bird as this puzzle, what our source material calls a dialectical challenge. He thinks he can use the tools of his mind, deduction, reason, to understand and beat this infinite sorrow. But as we see, his intellect is just a brittle shield, and he is so wrong.
And you can literally watch his mind just crumble in real time. First, he's the scholar, trying to make a logical deduction about where the bird learned that word. Then, he becomes the interrogator, desperately demanding answers to spiritual questions. Soon, he slips into being the victim, projecting his own inner demons onto the bird. And finally, he becomes the damned, where he just stops asking questions and accepts the bird's verdict as his own eternal sentence. So where does all this end? Well, it's pretty bleak. The battle is over. Reason is lost. Big time. The narrator fully surrenders to a permanent state of mourning, and his very identity starts to merge with the darkness that Raven represents. That chamber, which was once his sanctuary for learning and knowledge, is not a library anymore. It's become a shrine, a memorial to one single, inescapable truth, the finality of loss. And that's a truth that no amount of books or logic can ever argue away.
There's actually a term for this final psychological state he's in: inverted acceptance. He's not fighting the sorrow anymore. He's actually agreed to live inside of it, accepting its dark, permanent borders as the new and only dimensions of his world.
And he says it himself in those final, absolutely devastating words. He literally fuses his own soul with the shadow cast by the raven. It's not just a bird on a bust anymore. Its shadow is a real, metaphysical pool of despair on the floor. And he knows, he just knows, he will never escape.
Poe's poem gives us a chilling answer. When reason is conquered by sorrow, the mind doesn't just go dark, it becomes a monument to its own defeat. And it really makes you think, doesn't it, about the fragility of our own intellectual safe spaces when we're faced with the things we can never, ever rationalize away.